Watching a movie,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Picture cranking that up to about 20. And I mean, you could feel it. I mean, you could literally feel the shockwaves from this thing. And it went on for maybe really only 3 seconds, but it was the longest 3 seconds of my life because I swear to God, I could not move. If you want to live, do not move. Don't blink. Don't turn your head. And it was really one of the most, if not the most frightening time I've ever had. And I've been in Iraq and shot at with rockets and missiles and mortars and bullets, and I've jumped out of perfectly good working aircraft. And I'm telling you, this thing was less than 70 feet away from me, but it stayed behind this hedge. But there was no question, it was right there. And I really believe the reason it reacted like it did was due to my marking its territory, if you will.
Oh, that makes sense.
And I've heard about 5 or 6 different accounts where something crazy like that happened when they were, taking a leak. So the thing is, I told this to a friend of mine. I said, because he had one chase him, and I mean, it got close enough that he could hear it breathing behind him, and he was too afraid to turn around and look at it. And his wife even saw it, and she's like screaming at him, run, run, run. He couldn't run. And I said, and so I'm like, we're comparing notes, and I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, I never felt so helpless in my life. And he looked at me and he said, no, not helpless, hopeless. And when he said that, I went, wow.
Jeez.
I wasn't lacking help. I was lacking hope. I mean, I was literally praying. I was like, God, just make it happen fast. Just get it over with. The worst part was standing there for 2 minutes and nothing happening. He'd say, "Oh, kage," which meant hello, friend. Yeah. And then he would say, "Gigaho," which means come closer. And I'd see these eyes, one over here. I'm looking at it. I'm like, no way.
Holy, oh my God.
I'm like, what the hell's that? I mean, we don't have lights on the car. We don't have lights. We don't have flashlights on. There's no lights. It's just almost an abandoned road in the middle of nowhere along the Missouri River. I'm like, am I really seeing this? Right? And then all of a sudden over here, 2 more eyes come on. Or lights. No, I can't at this point say for certain they're eyes, but then he would talk to them both in native tongue and in English as well. And he would speak to them and they would stick around, and then all of a sudden there might be a third set of eyes, and you're like, come on. Really? There was this one, I can only assume it was a female, and this was on day 1, night 1, I should say. We were out there from we wouldn't even get out there till midnight. And we'd be out to 2 or 3 in the morning. I was sleeping into 11 o'clock or noon, and then going right back at it. We did, I'm telling you, 5 nights in a row with absolute consistency. And in 2 locations, mind you, because one evening we weren't getting a lot of activity. He says, get in the car, I'm going to take you to a place like 3 or 4 miles from here. I'm like, where are you taking? I can't even see the road, through the tall grass. And just keep going straight. We got out there at this other location, and sure enough, within like a minute at the most, all of a sudden, blink. I'm like, oh, we're miles from where we just were. How does this happen, right? And I saw one. We stopped partway down this road and turned off all the light stuff, and it was like, it appeared to be down the road maybe 100 feet. And then we had a second set of eyes at about our 3 o'clock trying to kind of sneak around us.
Jeez.
And at one point I said to him, hey, have you ever just walked up to him? This native guy, this is his turf. And he goes, are you crazy? And I went, I swear to God, I don't know what I was just getting frustrated. I said, hold my beer. He's like, what? And I'm not kidding. I'm walking down the road, and it's fall. It's October, so the leaves are crunching, and I'm just like, I'm looking at this set of eyes, and I'm just walking for it. I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just going for it. And I got about halfway to it, and they blinked out. They left, I guess. I don't know. But he still talks about it this day. He goes, a freaking crazy white man, man. I don't know what
away from him, and I put these horns on my forehead, and I turned around to him and smiled, and he screamed bloody murder. He was so scared.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I mean, he didn't know what the devil was or anything like that. He was just a baby at that time. But when I did a little bit more research about that, I discovered that even animals have this kind of archetypal fear of this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you imagine like a lion tamer, what does a lion tamer do sometimes? They have a whip, but they also have a chair. Okay? And a chair has legs, and legs look like horns from your enemy. So even within their collective unconscious, there's this idea of danger from this kind of thing. So, that gives us who? The devil has horns, bulls have horns. This is a kind of archetypal thing. So it's very possible, and there's another direction I want to go in here too. It's very possible that when people have these supposed repressed memories about, satanic abuse or alien abduction or things like that, it may be that part of that is just some of this collective unconscious bubbling up. It may be that they didn't really have, these are not really repressed memories, but there's something that's created, like your dreams. You dream every night. Everybody dreams every night of their lives. We just don't remember them all. But when you're dreaming, you're totally in the world of the subconscious mind. And you dream in pictures, you dream in symbols. How many people, raise your hands, how many people have flying dreams? How many people have dreams where, I have to relieve myself, but I can't find the room. I can't find one anywhere. You have these kind of dreams. Well, why do you have them? Well, the second one that I just mentioned, the needing to relieve yourself, is probably because you really do have to. And your subconscious mind is trying to tell your conscious mind, get out of bed and do what you need to do. But it may be that some of this, these supposed repressed memories, are just part of the collective unconscious bubbling up. It may be that you experienced or saw something that reminded you, like you said a moment ago. Maybe it happened to somebody else. And another aspect of this that I said I wanted to get to is I remember hearing it one time, and I don't remember whether this was a Jung thing or a Silva method thing or what, but someone said, somewhere I learned, that when you are in an altered state of consciousness, which is when you're dreaming or when you're in hypnosis, you have access to all the knowledge of the universe. That's a pretty kind of startling claim to make. But, parapsychology has studied this kind of thing forever. I mean, that's the idea behind telepathy and clairvoyance and even the remote viewing that I did with you folks last time, and that I've done several times with you, Dean. I mean, how on earth would I know things like that? How on earth could I see things like that? There's no physical explanation. Now, if I come out with that kind of information and you can show me what it was you were looking at, like Jen showed me her pyramid thing, then we can verify, okay, what I saw was right or was accurate to a degree or not. But when it comes to repressed memories, how can you prove that you were abducted by an alien? Where's the videotape of you? Who had their cell phone out when you were abducted? Nobody. But I have these puncture marks on my arm. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you were abducted by an alien. That those puncture marks could be anything. Those can even be created by hypnosis. We can talk about that later. I worked for a while in a church filled with people who felt that they had been satanically abused by a previous pastor. I don't know. There was very little physical evidence, forensic evidence. They had a police investigation, and they came up with very little. But there were people who swore that they had been abused. Some of them had, and a lot of them had repressed memories. Nobody knew that they had been abused until after this guy was gone, and people were beginning to remember these things. Well, I don't know. How can you prove something like that? It's as hard to prove that sometimes as it is to prove that there's a God. If you use your 5 physical senses to try to prove that there's a God, sight, you see God? No. Hearing, does God talk to your eardrums? No. Touch, can you touch God? No. Can you smell God? No. Can you taste God?
Figured out the personalities of the people who passed away, like you mentioned Fred. Is he more kind of dominant and just doesn't want anybody there, or is he more
No, he
open?
likes it. Yeah, he likes to talk to people. I think after a while, though, or if you get on his nerves, then he's kind of like, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
We also have a lady that's super crabby. I get her voice a lot. And she talks like she smoked like 100 cigarettes a day. So she kind of talks like this all the time,
Oh, God.
And she's super crabby. So she's always like, get out. My favorite one I got from her is I was the only one in the house. And when I'm there, a lot of times I just yammer on about, hey, this was my week. And I think I was like, hey, I'm going to a wedding. You ever been to a wedding? And so I'm just like talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get this EVP and she mumbled something, but because of course I was talking, I talked over it. I couldn't make out it. But I stopped talking. Then you heard her say, I'm trying to sleep. So it's like, yeah, I think she was mad that I was just rambling on about stuff and she's trying to take a nap. So we get her a lot. We had some inappropriate dinner conversation one time, something you wouldn't talk about back in the 1900s. Mm-hmm. And then we got an EVP that says, you're not very proper, are you? And so she was not very pleased with our dinner conversation that night. So
have you come up with any theories since you're experiencing that in the home as if they're, right there with you? Do you have an opinion of, life after death?
With them, I think it's just a really good attachment to the home. They have a lot of memories. They don't want to leave. And I think that's probably a majority of some spirits in some locations. And I just think that they're happy there. They're fine. I've asked them, they don't want to leave and they're enjoying it. And I think they like now too, because I'm learning more and more about them.
Yeah.
I've actually met with their I think he's just a grandson. Yeah. And he's told me stories about them. And so I will ask them questions. Actually on the spirit box, he told me that his grandmother, whose name was Minnie, fell down the stairs and broke her arm. And I would never get to know that information. And so I just happened to randomly say it on the spirit box. I'm like, who fell down and broke her arm? And plain as day on the spirit box said Minnie. But like one of my favorite locations is Edinburgh Manor in Scotch Grove, Iowa. We always just tend to get a lot of interaction. And the very first time we were there, we had a lot of equipment interaction, which was really super cool. But we had interaction with this little girl that's supposedly there. So we played games with her in the pool room and things. And on when I got home, one of the EVPs, when I said, okay, well, good night, have a good night. It was great. I had fun with you. And it was a Class A EVP of her saying, I'm going to miss you. So that was really cool. That always kind of drawn me back. Now, I haven't had any interactions with her since. But you get some really good EVPs. Something always happens at that location.
What's your take on Bigfoot?
Well, it's funny. I slide back and forth because I remember last time when I was on, Dean, we got talking about the Keel ultra terrestrials, sort of thing. I think there's and definitely like the indigenous people definitely believe it's more of a supernatural, spiritual element. And of course, having Chris there, that's why we brought the spirit box out. We wanted to see if we could tie into that and see what we could get with it. I lean more towards the flesh and blood myself personally. If there is a Bigfoot kind of thing, that to me makes more sense. But just hearing all those stories and what the First Nations believe, you had to acknowledge that when we went out and did our investigations to see what we could get. And we didn't get anything spirit box wise that sounded like a Sasquatch, but we did get an interesting. Didn't really come across in the show. There's like a constant weird mumbling going on. That just the whole time the spirit box was running, like that we just couldn't explain. And we got voices, like a name of a gentleman named Robert who wanted help. He was like, "Help me," kind of thing in the woods, right? And one of there's many First Nations creatures, for lack of a better word, in the woods, and some of them are these tricksters or familiars that will lure people into the woods away from their friends by sounding like a friend of theirs, like using a voice of someone they know to lure them deeper and deeper and deeper into the woods. And so who knows? That's why we're going to go back out, because we want to try to tie into that angle and see what we can find out if there's anything to that. So
maybe just follow that David Paulides advice and take a satellite locator with you and take a firearm. Paulides is always like, never go into the woods without a personal, whatever those satellite locators are, and make sure you got a gun. Yeah, take that and the gun. I think that's probably good advice. But it does,
again, just because there's so many things out there that you got to be worried about, bears, cougars, all bobcats. You always bring some kind of fire. If you go into the woods without one, you're foolish. Are leaking that information within their own government. And you have gentlemen like Jeremy Corbell who's really pushing for it and keeping it in the public spotlight. I think there is just no way that they couldn't say something and not address it in some sort of serious way. I'm not surprised with what did come out yesterday in terms of the lack of disclosure. I thought as soon as they attached a date to it, like last summer, they were saying, next summer, we're going to bring you something on UFOs. And to me, they knew probably last summer what they were going to talk about this summer, right?
Yeah.
So it's not surprising. And there's so much stuff. By the time the report was released, but yesterday I was pretty much on my phone every 20 minutes just updating the search. Just come on guys, let's go, like you 3 hours ahead, let's see it. When it finally came out and I read it, I was just like, well, there you go. It's like, we've heard everything in the papers leading up to it for months. They've said yes, there's something there, it's a potential risk. And they it was interesting, they said we do not believe that they're non-terrestrial. I thought that was an interesting terminology. In the one story that I read, one story said they don't think it's extraterrestrial, but they said they don't believe it's non-terrestrial, which I thought was an interesting term. And I think a lot of it that we are seeing, it's like back in the Cold War. I think it's that different countries trying out their super sleek spycraft and spying on each other and just seeing how it works. So and I'm sure that's where they're seeing U.S. spy planes over in Europe, and they've got Russian ones here, just like they were back in the 50s and the 60s. I think that's what the bulk of what we're seeing is. I mean, the stuff that's going underwater, that they're seeing, that is quite striking. I don't know if I could chalk that up to a super spy plane or not. James Bond, but I just so I think most of it, I wasn't surprised at all by it, and it's interesting that wasn't the end of it, though. You know what I mean? They're not saying this is the definitive report and we're done. They basically left it open that we're going to keep investigating it, and there's going to be more to come in the years and months ahead. Right. So I think that was pretty fascinating too. So the conversation is not over.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the sea change, that it's being reassessed again and readdressed, because after Blue Book closed and Condon did its report, that was really it for 50 years as far as any serious action. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't still investigating or there wasn't still something going on at a non-public level, but certainly the public presentation was, there's nothing to see here, folks, move along.
Yeah, and it's almost like they wanted the UFO stories to keep circulating as a means to just deflect from whatever serious business was going on.
I absolutely agree.
And even, it was funny, my wife, who's like the Scully of the family, she was just like, they're making all this fuss and there's a report, like, what are they really hiding? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they've been building this up. What are they trying to distract everybody from? And I
God bless your wife.
I know, right?